The first
Yeah,
words of the
monster.
stream.
The
uh, that was a good intro right there. So today we're gonna be talking basically, well, I should say I'll be talking about like how I see the beasts like pirates and like the calamities and kind of like their backstories and whatnot. And then I'll be trying to make it like short and sweet. And then if anyone on the channel has any questions while I'm talking, just interrupt me and ask. So I guess the first way I'll start it is kind of going down by the backstories. And so we know that basically all the pirates in general, most of the crews, have backstories of some sort to explain why they're doing what they're doing. So, for instance, Shanks, we're gonna get down the line, Blackbeard, we're gonna get down the line, but Big Mom we're seeing right now, which is wanting to kind of have a united country and having her wedding cake as well as like wanting to have a family that can eat around the dinner table. And then Luffy's is for adventure. Laws was kind of at first to kind of take down Dofi, but I'm sure there's more to it, and we'll probably see more down the line. But each pirate crew basically has a backstory of some sorts. So the Beast Pirates, looking back at it, I think that Kaido originally was going to be or is a member of the Gold Roger crew, in a sense, kind of like how other animes they usually have like a take along with one of the most OP like main protagonist characters in the story. So I think that he was either the egg that we see on Gold Roger's ship, or they may have picked him up on the way. Kind of how like Luffy, his whole thing is with his crew, like taking on Chopper and taking on Brook and stuff like that, is he likes kind of like the weird people. They interest him the most. And so I think Roger's very similar in that sense of, comparing his crew to like a normal pirate crew. We see, we have Odin, who normally should never be allowed to leave Wano. Rayleigh, who's, seemingly normal, but, super strong. Then we have Scopper, and then we see some other people like a Skypian. We see a fisherman on Gold Roger's crew. Like we kind of see that the whole works. And so I think Kaido was one of the original like not per se cabin boys, but like not main crew members. And so I think he was like a tag along member of the crew. And so I think his whole backstory for what we're going to see down the line with the Beast Pirates and why he formed the Beast Pirates was one of two things, which is the first is I think he originally was distraught that, Gold Roger got executed. And that's probably why he sought out Whitebeard all the time, was Whitebeard was very similar to Roger in strength. And looking at Ace, we have something very similar, which is Ace is trying to take down his, or so I should say, take down Whitebeard in the sense that he wanted to take down Roger, but Roger was dead. So the only way to overcome his dad was to fight and beat Whitebeard, which is why he brought the Spade Pirates to fight Jinbei to fight Whitebeard. And so I think Kaido's is similar, where he wants to die, and he also kind of wants to, die in a blaze of glory. And therefore, he's trying to do it by fighting Whitebeard. But now that Whitebeard's dead, he's going to find someone else, which is more than likely, I think, when Shanks interrupted Kaido from going to Marineford. I highly doubt they had a full-on fight or anything like that. Maybe a sword skirmish, something really quick and clean. But I think that Shanks promised uh, Kaido like a good fight in the future, and I think that fight was him talking about Luffy basically, and he probably promised him like a kid with a straw hat. The new Roger will be waiting for you in the new world to fight you, and I think we're going to see something like that down the line. And so the Beast Pirates, the other way that they were formed for was to basically kind of be a protection unit for each other, kind of along the lines of how like Nika Robin was under Crocodile, and you could say how the Okamas are, in the sense that these Beast Pirates are probably going to be all like at least their main calamities are all going to be people that basically were not accepted by human society. So like Jack, from what we've seen, he's half fisherman and most likely half, I'd say, human. And so I could see if he was actually born from a fish person and a human, that they wouldn't be allowed in society. One big thing that Oda does is kind of bring racial inequality and stuff like that by showing off different races in the series, kind of like how the fishmen are treated as lesser beings, um, which could be a representation of minorities in the real world, since Oda does take real things into consideration. I could see that Oda's way of showing Kaido as being, in essence, a good guy would be that he takes in these kind of hybrids, these, you know, different non-accepted human beings and fish people and whatnot, such as Jack, and that will be like his calamities. So I'm sure we could see a half mink, which I'll go to more so later, but I think that's gonna be the person that actually betrayed the minks. is a half-born mink. And so basically, I think it's going to be something where he is specifically protecting these people, these calamities under him, and that's like his whole thing. Is he's kind of taken from Roger what he sees as being like a huge value in the crew. And so I think that's where we're going to get it down the line, is something along those lines. And then talking about the calamities specifically, so we know about Jack, which is again half fishman, which the whole thing about fishman is, and which is why I believe he's called the drought, is fishermen basically use the vapor, the moisture in the air to use fisherman karate when they're not in the water, which is displayed by Jinbei. That's how they like interact with devil fruit users such as herding Luffy and stuff like that. So assuming Jinbei joins at the end of this arc, which I feel is pretty likely, we're probably going to see Jinbei basically help the Straw Hats by fighting one of the calamities down the line with Fishman. So, having Aladdin and all the other people with him, because most of these fights, in my opinion, are going to be like group fights against the calamities, in the sense that, like, for instance, if we were fighting Jack, he would have Sheep's Head and Ginrami on his side, along with the 3 lost Vikings, and then all the other crew members that they have, versus, let's say, like Jinbei, along with all the fishmen and whatnot. And so I think we're going to see Jinbei basically fight Jack, and it's going to be a battle basically of who has the better fisherman karate, kind of like how Zoro fights people with swordsman, who's, a better swords fighter. And I could see being the drought, his biggest like ability would be completely sucking all moisture from not only just the air, but saying from like living things such as plants and even maybe animals and such like that. And let's say if he had fish people around him, he could actually take out the water from their bodies, because he'd be a master, being a calamity. And so I think that's where the fight's going to go down there. And we obviously know mammoths and how they exist. And the big thing about mammoths is, going into what I was going to talk about later, which is the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which you probably heard in the community a couple times, is I think Jack's going to be the horseman of famine, which is the idea that anything that is like, eatable, edible, I should say, and anything that's drinkable that's not, how to put, not poisonous and whatnot, is something that the horse famine would take away from the human beings. And so, being the horse of famine, I could see it being wherever he goes, he completely dries out everything around him. That's why he's called the drought. And mammoths are allowed; they're susceptible. They're able to survive in harsh climates. And so, I could see that being where he's gonna kind of get his devil fruit passive, is being able to survive in the drought that he creates himself. Like, in a sense, he would basically mummify people, kind of like what a crocodile did with the sand. And so that's where I think Jack's going to be. And then going to the next calamity, this is the one I'm pretty sure of what I'm going to see with it. So I think this is going to be Usopp's fight, which is going to be the second calamity, which is probably going to be either the queen or king. And if it's the queen, I think it's going to be a rat zone type user. And the big
You
thing,
said you
what?
said Usopp?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think it's going to go Jinbei, Usopp, and then Sanji for like who they fight for calamities. And like this isn't going to be just Usopp by himself. This is going to be Usopp most likely with the Grand Fleet as his backup. So it's not going to be just like, oh, Usopp versus this Queen or whoever it is. It's going to be Usopp along with like Cavendish and Bartholomew and like all the other people along from the Grand Fleet. And so I think the big thing with these Rat Zone user is kind of like a weird and like garbage power that would seem, after seeing the biscuit fruit and seeing like what's capable of, I could literally seeing it being something along the lines of like a poison type user, kind of being its passive, being that like zone types, we haven't seen a whole lot from them in general. The only ones we've really seen a lot from would be, I'd say, kind of Jack, but more so the CB members. Seeing what like Jobber could do and seeing what Lucci especially could do with it. There was a lot more to these devil fruits, and same with Chopper, I guess, even. And so I think the rat zone type user is going to be the horseman of pestilence, and which is basically poison and like disease. And the one thing that was really interesting that I looked up, for people that know about Usopp and his lies and being prophesized and they all come true and whatnot, is one big thing Usopp said was that he has a cure to basically cure every disease. And I originally thought that was going to be about Chopper way down the line of the story, but I could see it being used in this arc in the sense like if everyone is getting overpowered by this not physical fighter, but like more of a technical fighter, um, I could see like all of the Grand Fleet being poisoned, even though they could be physically stronger than this person. And so Usopp somehow having this cure that could like cure any disease could be like a counter to it. But one thing that's really interesting about the Horseman, which is the white horse, which is a horseman of pestilence, is it's also called the conquering horse, but its a weapon of choice when it went to Earth to society was it brought a bow and arrow. And so knowing Usopp, long range fight, sniper fight, more so in the New World, we're about to see something like that before Von Augur, I'd assume. And so this would be the perfect introduction for like a long range type of fighting. And like one thing for Kingdom fans, not too big of a spoiler, but there is a main person that uses poison as their choice of weapon, as well as like using it, coating it on their arrows. And that was like a big thing is in war you would use that to like basically kind of like disease everyone out. Um, Kind of like how the Americans went to the Native Americans and they, a normal cold would basically kill off most people. So if this person, this zone user is, immune to disease but can carry all types of diseases, which is what I think of when I think of disease as rats, I could see this being a very powerful calamity to kind of like counter a lot of people. And then the next one to see would be the first calamity, which is King. And me and Dan were talking about one thing that we thought of was first of all would be a lion because king of the jungle and being king and being a zone type. Lions we haven't seen anything from. We saw it in the actual lion mink, which is Peckham's, but you had the turtle fruit. And I think lions overall, like any anime, anything in general, they symbolize being like the strongest creature in a sense. And so I think it'd be kind of interesting to see a lion. And like a twist on it would be really cool would be if we saw like a griffin of some sort, like a chimera, especially with an air, because I think of who would fight a lion slash griffin, especially if it's a griffin, would be Sanji and Marco, in the sense that like we're bound to see like a good air battle between the two of them. And so like it'd be the Marco remnants alongside Sanji fighting this calamity, and they'd be kind of like a perfect fight for them would be like a complete air battle, which would kind of like make it so only Sanji and Marco at the end could actually fight these people. And then kind of like looking back at it, if you look at all three types of these calamities, we would have Jack, the mammoth, who's an ancient. We would have the rat zone, which is just a normal type zone. And then we would have the last zone user, which would be a mythical, being a griffin if it is mythical. Otherwise, it would be like a regular zone. But I think it's going to be more so mythical. So we'd have the three different types of zones. And then you have, Kaido being the horse of death, which made sense to me because the one big thing about Kaido that we've seen is he cannot die, basically. He's tried so many times, he still can't die. People can't kill him off. So being the horse of death is kind of like a nice twist on it. And if you look at the scene from what I think Kaido is looking back as, I think he's going to be either one of two things, which is the Ox King, mythical zone, or he's going to be something along the lines of a ogre zone. Because if you look back with Eustace when he's in the cage, kind of the things that you see, because people think he's gonna be drained, but the things that you see is the uh, the shackles on his arms, which ogres tend to have. Another thing is, which is the biggest sign to me, is the sake jar that he has, like the big jug. One big thing in Japanese culture to show like ogres being kind of like, in a sense, demigods, like rulers of both heaven and earth, is they would have a sake jar that says hell and heaven, or heaven and hell, whatever way you want to say it. And if you look at the jar, it says heaven on it, which is really interesting, but we never see the other side. So I thought that was kind of like another indicator. But the big thing is there's a story in Japanese culture, which is clearly where Oda's basing Wano off in general, as we know that Momo is a, peach, from everything you see, his name itself, is if you look at the actual lore, like the background of this Japanese culture, is it would be Momo. I believe it's called Momo and the Peach Kingdom, which is in the sense that this little kid Momo has family in a faraway castle where his father tells him stories about these animals that exist and like these fairy tales that exist outside of the castle, but he never leaves to go find them at first. And then the Ox King, which is like a demon, comes and takes over the castle and basically kills off his family. And so he, as an orphan, gets sent away by the palace to go find a monkey, which would be Luffy, a dog, which would be Inurashi, and then a pheasant, which would be Marco, to help him take back the castle. And then they go back, and the Ox King is, basically an ogre in the form of an ox king. And so, like, everyone that's seen Dragon Ball Vivi, or not Vivi, um, Gohan's wife, Chi-Chi's father, is the Ox King, which is like the ruler of heaven and stuff like that. And so it'd be interesting to see something along those lines, which is basically someone that is a um, specific tie into the Momo and the Peach Kingdom tales, as that's clear where Oda's referencing it. And then one other thing would be like, going back to the Shogun, which isn't a beast pirate, obviously, but is related to the beast pirates, would be, the dragon, which I think everyone's kind of known about already. But I think the dragon's going to have something more into it in the sense that, like, I think the Shogun himself is going to have a brother, which is kind of like a weird thing to say. And the reason I say he's going to have a brother is one of two things, which is we know Kitetsu, who's a famous blacksmith, makes swords, he imbues his soul into it and whatnot, but then they become cursed, such as how we have Sendai Kitetsu, which is the third sword that he made, which I believe is the newest sword that Zoro is carrying, and we've seen that it reflects Asura, the demon of rage or the war god, whatever you want to call it. And so his whole story for Oda's going off of is Hideyoshi and Limitsu, um, which is Tsunayoshi, which is a time, if you've ever seen Hitman Reborn, it's kind of like that. It's the idea that basically a younger brother that's born from an off mother, it's like a half blood, is basically sent away from the kingdom at first because the kings don't want him to be an actual like heir to the kingdom. So if you look at Kingdom, Sekio, and Aisei, those are perfect examples of this kind of scenario. So if Odin is the actual supposed to be Tsunayoshi, I could see him being sent away basically, and then being a daimyo still, similar to kind of how Koshiro is most likely an ex-daimyo. But anyway, so basically we're gonna see most likely his brother, which is gonna be Hideyoshi, and then we're gonna see the main guy, which is kind of like Oda Nubanga, which is most likely where the evil portions of it's based off of. So it's kind of like how the game Neo runs and stuff like that. And then going back to Beast Pirates, so the big thing about it is I think we're going to see kind of a tie in, like a story explanation of how Kaido himself is going to have relations to Roger. He himself is basically the protector of the weird creatures in the world, which is why he wants someone, is because it represents what he is, which is like an animal on the inside, and stuff like that, being a hybrid of some sort. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse tied in with all these zones and stuff like that. That's kind of like the basis for most of that shit. So I don't know if you guys have anything like to say about it or anything you want to ask. That's kind of like what I want to talk about in a nutshell.
I mean, you drop all the facts we needed, so.
Like, what do you guys think? Like,
I have one question.
Yeah.
Did you write all that down?
Nope.
Wow.
He just, he just knows this stuff, man. Like,
but like, if you like look at these stories, like I guess I can post them later in like the description, some of that. Like Oda's big thing is he ties in like actual culture, and being that we're going to Wano, which is obviously like everyone should know is Japan. It's supposed to be like Japan in One Piece, so it's clear he's going to show off all of his like cultural knowledge of Japan. And like I said, the biggest like childhood story was Momo and the Peach Kingdom. And one thing that's interesting is like if you look at the kingdoms, there's like a side note. Like if you look at the daimyos that we know of, which is the Kozuki and stuff like that, is most likely we're gonna see all these kingdoms named after like nuts, basically, nuts and fruits. Which I will have to find out what I posted. But there's like 6 famous like types of nuts in Japan, and Kozuki was one of them, which is like a peach apricot type of nut. So I think that's what he's kind of like basing off like the wordplay of all the kingdoms off of. And so we're to see like the other 5 daimyos probably based off something like those. Kind of like in Dragon Ball they base everything off of like fruits and vegetables. Kakarot, Vegeta, Frieza, all that stuff.
Okay. I mean, I do like the stuff with the commanders. I mean, like the Rab one you've been telling me for a while. Like that actually sounds like a very plausible thing. I mean, like the only one I would say maybe like the lion, because like I do like the idea of like the almost like the king of the jungle kind of feel and stuff, right? But to me, it's like I like maybe like a griffin, like you were saying before. I think would be really, really interesting to see maybe a griffin, just something like mythical. Because like when we look at Kaido's crew, so it's so like diverse in terms of like different like zone fruits and stuff. Like, we're to say a lion. I mean, like, I want to say it's like obvious, but like it's something I think we would kind of expect. Like, like if we're to think of like any animal we can think of we haven't seen yet, a lion would come up to mind.
Yeah.
So I think like maybe just be something like very outside the box and stuff, like more on the mythical side, maybe griffins, like Cthulhu, but I think that would kind of be stretching a bit.
I could see Cthulhu. The only reason like I kind of went against those is my original thing that I thought before the Horsemen was like the 3 types of land, sea, air rulers. Like if you ever play Final Fantasy, they have like the primals in there, and it's kind of based off that. Which is you have Behemoth, which is the ground primal, which I originally before I saw Jack's fruit, that's what I thought he was gonna be.
Right.
And then Leviathan, which is the sea creature, and then there's one more I can't think of what it is, but it's an air creature. And because they said originally in the translation that Kaido was the ruler of air, sea, and land of all the creatures, I thought like maybe each of his calamities would rule one of the other types, which would be kind of like a cool twist on it.
Hmm.
Can I ask where Drake fits into your thing?
Yeah,
I can't see.
I put it in the YouTube, so I think he's in here already, isn't he?
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
like, I do like the fact that like kids, not kid, Drake is like not one of the calamities because I feel like he has to be at least like one of the allied captains because I think anytime like people say like he could be one of them, I think I don't want to say it devalues like the Beast Pirates, but at the same time like we want to open up like more new characters and see like what the potential that they have. And I think kind of like if people were saying like if he is end up being like one of the other calamities, I think it might kill like the hype a bit of his crew because like you already knock off one member, we know another member. And then it's like, well, the third one, it's a mystery.
Yeah, I think the big thing with the calamities is like, if we look at Jack and we assume Jack is the 3rd calamity, right? He is very OP, like very powerful.
Yeah.
But if he's only the 3rd, can you imagine how stronger like Kaido is and how stronger these other 2 are? That's kind of how I see it. Like, I don't think X-Ray is going to be a calamity. I think he's going to be like a captain under the 1st calamity, kind of like Sheepshead is.
Yeah.
Because one thing that was interesting, which like people say it might be a sheep's head, but I don't think so. Is if you look in the underground broker scene in the manga, there's a panel where we see someone that's wearing kind of like a Doflamingo looking like feather coat, walking away, and they're like talking about how they're gonna go talk to Jack, like and how Jack's gonna be pissed off that like Caesar got captured. I thought that was interesting because I thought that was going to be like the 1st or 2nd calamity, because I imagine the 1st calamity is going to be the reasonable person in the crew, kind of like Killer is to Eustace in the sense that like the other 2 are going to be super probably crazy, but this person
Same thing
like,
I was thinking.
Yeah, this person's going to be the one that explains things to Kaido in a realistic manner. And I think this, and I think the 1st calamity is probably going to be like a hybrid of a mink, because I do think like that's going to be a big thing is like his entire crew's backstory is going to be based around like being rejects from society, kind of like how like even Brooke was a reject. Like Frankie told him on the Spider Bridge that like even if he were to go into the outside world looking what like how he looked now, like people wouldn't accept him because he's a fucking walking skeleton.
Yeah.
And so I think it's gonna be an interesting tie-in because like I don't think these people like are bad. Like even Blackbeard I don't think gonna be bad in the sense of like why they're doing what they're doing is for a good reason. It's like if you look at like Death Note and stuff like that, like Kira, like Light Yagami, what he's doing is bad, but why he's doing it isn't bad. Like it's kind of like shed some blood to like do what you gotta do. Like kind of why like Kingdom they're uniting all China, even though like they had to like kill off tons of people to do so.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be something like that where like he's basically protecting his kin, like his hybrid crew from the outside world. Because I could even. Oh yeah, go ahead.
If a mink is part of Kaido's crew, wouldn't he be considered a traitor?
That's what I'm saying, because like the whole thing with the minks is they were never originally supposed to ever leave. Kind of like in Wano, they never supposed to leave. So like I could see it being something where like either they were born on the island and rejected, or most likely they were born off the island and rejected by society. And then which would be how like they said like minks have like an internal compass, kind of like most animals do in real life, is they like know where like their home is and stuff like that, no matter what. Is that kind of how I feel like it would be. Like it would make sense because I know people thought the monkey Barati was going to be the traitor, but I could see this person being the actual traitor and knowing about their homeland. And like if they were truly rejected by the Dukes, it would be interesting because if they're rejected by the Dukes, then they wouldn't have any like feelings towards the kingdom. So like when Jack destroyed the kingdom, like it wouldn't be a big deal to them. So that's kind of how I see it, because I don't think the monkey's going to be the actual traitor. I could see why, but like at the same time, like I just kind of doubt it.
I mean, he seems way too innocent though. If you kind of look at, like, especially the recent episode of the anime, I think like it kind of says right there he won't be, just because like I was saying before, like he's like very innocent. He's like childlike and stuff, and I can't see like somebody childlike, you know. And then again, we kind of look at Big Mom's crew, like we see like kids are all fucking crazy. So if a kid's crazy, maybe this little monkey might be crazy too, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah. Like, but yeah, so like someone's background is going off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like my whole thing is like that's kind of how I see the calamities and where they're gonna be, just because
Mhm.
like looking at like actual fables and stuff like that. Like one big thing that like, for instance, you saw the Madam Mim thing for Big Mom last night that I probably posted on Twitter.
Yeah.
From the Sorcerer in the Stone. Like one big thing in like Oda's older interviews with Funimation was he talked about like how he got really good at drawing manga and like just drawing in general. Was he would go watch his Disney movies, which was his favorite thing. And then he would try to draw out the characters as he would go. So I'm thinking like, you know, clearly there's a lot of like tie-ins to Alice in Wonderland in this arc, but I'd be interested to see if this lady is a tie-in between a tie-in between the Red Queen as well as Big Mad Madam Mim, because Mad Madam Mim's big thing was when she was first introduced. Lily, like she, first of all, she could turn into a giant, she could shrink, but she was playing with cards on the table, which is, you know, from what we've seen, we kind of see that in this arc. But then she has a fight against Merlin later, and it's kind of interesting because she shows us like a caterpillar, which would be Worm Dog. She shows a chicken, which would be Tamago. She shows a turtle, which would be Peckums. And then she shows like a dragon and some other creatures, but I just thought it was kind of like pretty close in the sense that like, you know, if Oda's basing it off Disney characters, this is how I see what she would look like in a Disney movie.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's basically
Well,
everything for
I don't
my.
know if you guys touched on this topic before I was here, but what if the Zoan fruits were first developed to counter the minks?
Well, so before we even got to the Zoe, like before we got to Zoe, right, and we heard about these minks, like I originally thought that the minks, and they still could be, were a failed creation of devil fruits for zone users. Because again, zone from my point of view is all these devil fruits are man-made, and so if they're man-made, and let's say if like, you know, they will started off with Parmesan, went to Zone, and went to Logia to like perfect them, which is why Logia is the most rare. As I could see if they are kind of like, let's say, either genetic failures of these fruits, like being passed down, because the whole thing about the fruits is like they manipulate your genes, which is why you can go to like hybrid form and stuff like
Wouldn't
that.
they
Like
be considered the successful experiments then?
I don't think. Well, I don't think so, because a successful experiment would be allowed to transform you back and forth, where these people are stuck as they are. Kind of like how smiles are kind of doing what they're like what minks would be, where like they transform your body into portions of animals, but not the full animal control itself. So like if these zone users are failed creations from the government from way back, and you know they escaped on Zoe to live on Zoe or whatever, right? Then I could see them being basically like the successors, the blood genes, like the descendants of the original failed creations.
I see it more like yeah, I get what you're saying, but I see it more like the minks are the successful experiments of an ancient people, like for like the D clan or something, while the devil fruits are some kind of replica to basically replicate the ability, but it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, because the pacifistas, we're gonna see that the new ones most likely. I'll probably end the stream soon, just so it's not like random like side chat. But yeah, it's like the pacifistas to me are gonna like the new ones, the new PXs are most likely gonna have the gravity fruit and a zone type fruit, which will be from, you know, Green Bull as well as Fujitora. And so like lineage factors are probably how they were creating these Kumas, like these new cyborgs. Being that they weren't full machines, they were partial like humans and stuff like that. So I think they're clones of Kuma, but then modified to be cyborgs and stuff like that. So like lineage factors, as soon as we saw that in the recent chapters, like that sparked it to make me kind of completely agree with myself that like that's what's going to be down the line. Like we're going to see like even fish people might be like descendants of failed creations of other things, like of genetically modified beings. Which is why a lot of people think that Blackbeard might be a like failed gene. I think he might be a failed gene of Roger personally.
Right. I mean, like I was gonna also say, because I think Billy Bob was asking in the chat about the Shogun, and I think like, well, my thing I was gonna ask, like in regards to like, do you think the Shogun will probably have like a zone fruit? Like if we're going based on like Kaido's crew and stuff, right? Do you think like would it be a disappointment if like he were to have like a zone ability and stuff instead of like focusing more on his sword skills?
Well, I think it's gonna be a combo of both because people that haven't read Monsters yet, which is a one shot from Oda, which
Yeah.
is where he got Ryuma from, you should read it because it'll probably be so many things that like are explained later in Wano.
Yeah.
Because the big thing about Monsters was we had Ryuma, who was a traveling swordsman.
Yeah. They have the girl.
Yeah, his whole goal was to basically go and find the world's best swordsman, which is the Sword Emperor, the Sword King, whatever they want to translate it to.
Mhm.
And he's going around. He finds this girl who's in the bar. He runs across supposedly one of the best swordsmen in the world, which wasn't the best, but one of the best. And this guy basically, his whole thing was he acted like a good guy, but he's really a bad guy. And he had the dragon's horn, which was, as it says, like a horn of a dragon. And
Yeah.
he could call down these mythical dragons, which were basically super OP. And then Ryuma went like one shot it, and then he found out later that he himself was the Sword Emperor, and he like didn't ever like understand that he's trying to find himself. But yeah, so like I expect him to be a type of dragon, the fruit user, but I think he's gonna also have demonic sword abilities because I think everyone in Zo. Because I think for one thing is I think Zoro, like I literally think Zoro is gonna somehow get lost on like a side like trip somewhere after he finds Kuina, and he's gonna go run into Katetsu because I think Katetsu's still gonna be alive or at least a descendant of his.
Yeah.
And so he'll probably get new sword or he might get Sandai Katetsu upgraded maybe. You never know. And so like I think we're gonna run into like all these demon form users and stuff like that. And I think that he's gonna have full control over Astra by the end of the arc.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It'd be so awesome too if the Shogun has this not only the demon forms, right? Zoro has two forms. The Shogun has this like dragon like form, while Zoro goes like in his gorilla form, gorilla arms.
Well, Oda said that if Zoro was ever going to be a creature, he'd be a shark, though, which is interesting. But
yeah, I mean the gorilla arms.
Yeah, 1-2 gorilla. But yeah, I think we're gonna see Kuina with a demon form, and the brother of the Shogun with the demon form, and the Shogun with the demon form.
I was gonna say, like, what would be cool to see, like, how we're talking about like the Shogun possibly having a dragon fruit. Would it be too far fetched to think that the dragon, like, if we look at like design and stuff, could be the same one we saw in Monster?
I don't see why not. Like, I think we're gonna hear more about dragons in general. Like, I think he's gonna hear about like the original dragons. Cause, like dragons, they existed in One Piece. They weren't like mythical beings. They were ancients. So that's the thing. Like, if he is a Zoan, he'd be an ancient Zoan, not a mythical Zoan.
Right. Okay. Well, I had another one. I forgot what it was, but
yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the possibility that because there's a lot of theories about it, that the Shogun could be the father of Zoro as well?
Nah, I don't think that's gonna happen. Only reason is one big thing I thought was interesting for Zoro's backstory, because again, Zoro's backstory can get retconned in the sense that like it's gonna be changed a bit, kind of like how Sanji's was, because Oda's original thing was only supposed to be like 5 years, so like clearly he's gonna have a better story than like just having Quina kill herself. So I think Zoro's gonna be a descendant of Ryuma for sure, but I don't think this Shogun's gonna be the rightful heir to be the Shogun. Kind of like, again, if you look at Japanese culture with Hideyoshi and Tsunayoshi, basically the brothers that weren't supposed to be the firstborn heirs, they kind of took over by force. Because like I don't want to spoil too much about Kingdom, but like, we're all caught up here. But basically how like Sekio didn't want Issei to be the king because his mom was a prostitute, not an actual like lady of the court.
Yeah.
It's think of it that way. The Shogun would be Sekio, the current Shogun would be Sekio, and like the former Shogun could have been Issei and stuff like that. And so like I think there's some kind of like fishy shit going on. Because the whole thing that always interests me is Odin, like the whole thing is like you're not supposed to open your borders or leave the country when you're in Wano, right? But how is it that people like Koshiro and his wife left, Wano? Like it shouldn't be a thing. And like the fact that he's gonna have tie-ins with Dragon as one of his top commanders, like leads me to believe that like Zoro, because Zoro originally said that like he was basically a dojo challenger, like he'd go and fight dojos to take them over. But when he first went to Koshiro's dojo, he literally didn't know any of the rules. Like he didn't know how it's supposed to work. So like clearly he was lying. So like my thing is he's most likely just arrived around there and was just dropped off, which he could have been dropped off by Dragon maybe to be guarded, like safeguarded by Koshiro maybe. That's how I see it. Because they were on an island, like there was no leaving the island. Therefore, like if he's dropped off there, like I could see him, either being a stowaway from Dragon's ship whenever they go to get supplies, or he could have just straight up been dropped off by Dragon. So I think he's the rightful heir maybe to the Shogun, or something along those lines. But I don't think he's the direct descendant of the current Shogun.
Yeah.
Because like I think all the Straw Hats at the end of the series, as like cliche as it sounds, I think at least a majority of them are all going to have like ties to these like original Joy Boy Kingdom people, like how Usopp like is supposed to be Nolan's like descendant, even though Mont Blanc Cricket is, he could still be a descendant.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have Zoro be the descendant of Ryumo, who is probably one of the original like people from Joy Boy's Kingdom, and then Sanji is probably gonna have something like Luffy and all the other people. And like I don't know. That's just how I see it. It's gonna be kind of like a fated destiny type of scenario, with like these crew members becoming like one like group. It'll be like a reincarnation of Joy Boy's group.
Oh yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And then I was gonna say too, like for Kisetsu, because how it's been rumored that it's supposed we don't know the gender, so it could be a guy, right? But if it were to be a woman,
wait,
like what do you think the chat? Oh, Kisetsu, the one who created the swords.
Oh yeah. Well,
yeah, like if let's say we find out it's either a guy or a girl. If it's a girl, you think what are the chances of her like being like maybe Zoro's mom if it's not the Shogun that's like a relative to him?
I forgot what series it is, and like if this is like an actual like swordsmith. It might even have been Kingdom. I can't remember. Actually, I think it was Kingdom.
Oh, yeah, it might be. Yeah, it is.
The female sword maker and then the male sword maker, like the husband and wife. Like those were actual people. Like so, I could see it being something like that, where like the husband and wife are still there. The other thing we're gonna see kind of like Setako, I think his name is, the older guy, like the politician in Kingdom. I think he's gonna look kind of like that, but better. And since it's gonna be someone super ancient.
Okay.
Like I could see him like somehow, I don't know, like I just think we're gonna see like the big thing for Wano thing is we're gonna see demons and like in general and like how they operate in terms of One Piece like powers. Like I think that's gonna be Zoro's like form of having an exoskeleton for Sanji and a devil fruit for Luffy. Is he'll have his demon form to like rely on later in the series.
Yeah. Okay. And then obviously like in regards to like the swords, like if we were to get like a new sword, possibly, let's say he gives up Shisui and he has to get a new one. Does he get not Sandai Ketsu, but the Nodai Ketsu?
Yeah, I think like the only reason I don't want him to lose Sandai Ketsu is I feel like it'd be cooler to see like Zoro have like what's supposedly weak swords and like see them be super OP later down the line, because like these swords like they can, I don't know, but it's not the sword itself that makes like it be legendary, it's who uses it.
Yeah, of course.
Like so I feel like him using Sandai Ketsu for the rest of the series would be kind of cool, but I could see it maybe breaking and him getting that sword. Like the other sword that I think we'll see soon enough would be Masamune, which is like the most famous sword in all of Japan, which is the sword that basically takes away souls and shit like that. And so like I could see that being someone having that on the island.
Which is an interesting thought. That the theory that Ashura is housed in his cursed sword.
Yeah.
What if the gorilla form is actually also one result of one of his swords?
I don't think it is. I think the gorilla form straight up like one of his like move, kind of like how he has Jewel Panther and Ultra Tiger and like Hawk Shot and Hawk Wave. Like his whole thing was like he was kind of like in Buddhist culture, like animals were like a big thing, like and like if you look at like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, shit like that. I think it was something similar to that, where like you like for instance, like if anyone reads like History Strongest Disciple, the whole thing is like the top people in like this is in real life. The top people get their fighting styles, like their martial arts, from watching animals, because like animals like internal instincts for combat is like higher than humans, and so I think that's kind of where it came from. Was like his gorilla form was just his muscle form, like it was him expanding his muscles, like we see it in Film Gold as well. I think Asura is the only thing that we haven't seen before, and the only thing I could see with Asura would be like how he calls it. I think it's like one silver mist. Is it could be like a mist style technique, which would fit Zoro along with the purple aura. For people that read Hitman Reborn is not Hibari, Mukuro. He uses mist, and like his whole thing is like he's purple aura. So I think it could be something like that. Because I think the green aura from Mihawk is gonna make the of the void and not like of anything else. Or it could be of the wind, but I think it's gonna be of the void.
Yeah.
I think each of the Damios are gonna have their own style. Because the ones we know so far confirmed are of the mist, of the fire, and of the wind. Those are the ones that are completely confirmed to be in the
Shaolin
series.
monks.
So,
Are you talking about the 5 rings, right?
well, there's six in total because each of the Damios. And I'm saying like, from what we see, we've only seen 3 confirmed for names. So we have the mist. Most likely, there's a mist village, a wind village, and then the fire village. And so
Or
we're
like,
gonna get 3 more.
Yeah.
And I think the other 3 are gonna probably be
Earth
of
and
the,
water.
like, yeah, probably earth, water, and then I think either lightning or could be void.
Yeah.
Also,
Can you hear me?
yeah. The Shaolin monks also use the inspiration from animals and
Yeah.
martial arts. But also, interestingly, if swordsmen do that, then what do you see Shanks taking inspiration from?
Like, to me, Shanks isn't even really a swords fighter. I think he's just like naturally super strong with a sword, in the sense like he's like a natural born swordsman, which is probably what irked Mihawk to fight him all the time. Was like he kind of just picked up the sword and was just naturally good with it. I think. Like I don't think he has a direct fighting style. Like if I were to give him a fighting style, kind of like what we've ever seen in the games,
I
like
think he does.
he's kind of like a counter style, like how like the French they fight with like countering like rapiers and stuff like that. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a wait and see technique. So I think that's kind of what Zoro or not Zoro, Shanks is he like directly counters people. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like almost like Gold Roger too, because you look at it like he's seen carrying a sword and stuff. It doesn't make him a swordsman. Like he just has skills. Like he's already OP as it is, but like that's just like part of his repertoire.
Yeah.
I think they do have a style. But
Yeah.
Draken, you were saying something.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
you to the guys that joined the voice,
Saying,
academy,
could you-
like, what do you guys want to say?
Alright, cool. I didn't know
No,
if
no,
I was on fuzz, yeah.
No, I was waiting for you to say something. That's why.
Go ahead.
No.
Say.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know if I was songing play or not.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, you're sounding clear.
So I'm just showing the channel now. Do you think Zoro could win against 1v1 Jack?
Yeah, but
Um, I think he could, only in the sense
I don't
like,
think so.
because like I think Jack's the weakest of the calamities, and like
Yeah.
Zoro, like he hasn't really shown anything. So like, I don't know. I think he personally could. Like I think if they were put in a scenario where they had to fight 1v1, I think he could do it. But like I don't know, these calamities are gonna be super strong. That's the only reason I would say maybe against it. But like it's Zoro of all people. Like if he's if he's fighting the Shogun, and in my opinion the Shogun's gonna be as strong as the first seat, if not stronger.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be in what, like a month in One Piece time at most. Like it took him 2 weeks I think to get to Zo or whatever. So probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks in the story. Like that's not a whole lot to have time to train. So like I think he has to be at least as strong as a third or second seat. I don't know.
I think
Like-
Jack will crucify Zoro.
Nah.
Mhm.
We're gonna make fucking. I thought we talked about this. Remember how Sanji's stronger than the Jack?
Stop.
Whoa.
I think it's like you go back to like the matchups and stuff. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me with like how things are going right now. It's like when we have like the whole thing with Rouge taking down like Snack. He probably did it 1-on-1. Where it's like we know with Luffy, like he had to use like Nami to help him out to win that fight. So, but again, it comes up to like the matchup because we're going with stamina. Obviously, Luffy's not gonna be able to win a fight with stamina. If it's a fight where it's gonna be like based on physical skill and trying to like knock out the other person, Luffy probably could win based on the feats that we've seen of him.
Yeah, like I personally think Zoro has more stamina than Luffy from what we've seen so far in the story.
Yeah,
In terms of like him tanking Kuma's like things and stuff like that. I don't know.
yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, but if you think already about what you said with Kuma against, sorry, I already said it. My bad.
So confused. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything else? I'm gonna end the stream just so it's not too long.
It's not that.
I mean, Wano's gonna be goats. The Beast
So y'all
Pirates are
think-
gonna go in. Like,
We have another debate tomorrow.
Y'all
right?
think that
What was that?
y'all think that Fuji is stronger than the y'all think that Fuji is stronger than the top swordsman in Wano?
I don't think so.
I think from sword fighting skills, maybe not, but because we know what Fuji's ability, like in terms of ability, maybe we haven't seen the Shogun what he has, but from what we've seen of the gravity abilities that like Fujitora has, it might be an advantage to him. But I think I rather wait until like we see what the Shogun has before we can kind of do that.
Yeah, if we're talking about sword fighting, I don't think there's even a chance that the Shogun
Yeah.
should lose. Because in
Like,
my opinion,
yeah.
the Shogun should be the strongest swordsman besides Mihawk in the series. In
Yep.
the sense that all the top tier swordsmen generally come from Wano. Like that's the birthplace for these people.
Right.
Kind of like how all the CP techniques come from Kano Kuni. So like if they're if we're talking about like CP9 techniques, like who's stronger, like the leader of Kano Kuni or like Lucy, like it would be the leader of Kano Kuni because he developed the techniques.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
And then,
But
Billy Bob was also
It's-
asking the last question, I guess, like if Green Bull's going to show up on Wano.
Personally, I think all the good Marines, like I think Kobe, Helmipo, Smoker, and Toshigi are gonna probably show up. Because I think Wano's gonna be the big climax in the story for One Piece in general, for the New World. Like it's gonna be equivalent to like CP, like NA's lobby. And since like
Yeah.
we only have 7 years left of One Piece in real life, so like this arc should take about 2 years. If Dressrosa took that long. So I think this is gonna make a huge climax in the series where we're gonna see all the Straw Hats, all the like main characters go all out. And I think this is when like Kobe and Helmipo are gonna be introduced. But that's how I
Yeah.
see it.
I think that would be for.
Do you think
the-
it will have a time skip after?
Uh,
Right after Wano?
It kind of seems likely it could, but I would say like something around like 6 months to a year where like they have to go into hiding. Because the way I've been seeing it for a while now is that like let's say like one of the Yonkos falls. Like we gone with the whole thing where like we've seen Shishibukai fall. That's one of the 3 great powers. And we've seen already what happened with Whitebeard. Like when Whitebeard fell, the world went crazy. So if Kaido were to fall, and let's say like one of the admirals, for example, were to fall, but the big thing would be Kaido since he's pretty much known around the world for like who he is. The balance is already broken. And with Akainu at the helm too, I think just his personality, like he's not going to take this shit anymore. Like Sengoku kind of bided his time for a bit, but like someone like Akainu, especially when he finds out like Luffy played a part in his downfall, he's going to say screw it. Like because now he knows that Wano's borders are open, anyone can jump in. So even if the Marines are there as well, he can just leave the Reverie or wherever he's at the headquarters and just show up to Wano trying to track down Luffy. And I think there, like someone would have to try and like go like place them into hiding at that point.
I was thinking, is it not a possibility that the Shogun is not even from Wano?
I don't think so. Only because like for how because the thing is of Wano is you can't leave or enter Wano if you're not born there. And so like I highly doubt the top person there would be outside of Wano. That's how I see it. Because
Yeah.
like I don't know how to put it, like it's like you have to be a natural born citizen.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, like the whole
Correct me if I'm wrong.
oh, go.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But Odin, was he the Shogun beforehand, or he was just or he
was
just
just a
had the
daimyo.
ability to write on it?
Yeah, just the Daimyo. But they could do something afterwards where like he was the Daimyo, was supposed to be the Shogun, but then something happened and they screwed him over. Like a scandal pretty much.
So I'm gonna end the stream here and I'll timestamp where my theory ended and then where the side chat begins. I just wanted to try to make it short and sweet. So thanks for sticking in and listening to it, guys. And like I said, like this is just completely like a theory of my point of view of the story. Like there are some things that won't make sense unless you look into it yourself to like try to look at it from like my viewpoint. But that's how I see the story gonna go. So anything else you guys want to say before I end the stream now?
I mean, Wano's going to be GOATs. It's going to be legendary. The Beast Pirates are going to go in. Queen, Thousand Stairs, Kondo. Let's get it.
And we have a debate tomorrow, right?
I wish
The power scaling debates.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting what we
Wait,
can
you're-
think of any matchups.
the debates you're talking about, that's the one where y'all do like crazy shit and no matter what, you try to defend the people.
Yeah, so basically, to sum it up, what we're doing is like we would take out two characters. One person would have to defend the other character and say, you know, what feats have we seen from this character that could help them win in a battle against the other we're going to be facing up against.
Yeah.
I saw one of those. That was hilarious.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
fun.
Wish Dragon could solo all the Yonko, but it's not true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Dragon's most dangerous man in the world. I mean,
So see you guys for tomorrow's stream then. And I'm gonna probably try to do more like of my theories on this channel to like do it once a week or so like that, since people have been asking me to do them. And we'll see how it goes with the reception of it.
I mean, keep dropping the facts, man. Like, people got to know.
Peace, guys.